Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 208 of the Last Round Podcast. We weren't here last week due to some scheduling conflicts. We apologize for that, but we're back here in 2023, the second month of 2023, episode 208. Jumping right back into it. This past Friday, the 3rd of February, from the Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona on ESPN. Emmanuel El Vaquero Navarrete, 37. It's the 37th victory of his career, with a 9th round TKO over Liam Wilson. This was for the vacant WBO Super Featherweight Championship of the World. I believe Navarrete was down early in the fight as well. So this was actually a pretty entertaining fight. Both fighters obviously went down, with Wilson ended up taking the loss. But I believe, wasn't there, before we actually get into the analysis of this fight, Mike, wasn't there, I saw some chatter on boxing Twitter during the weigh-in that maybe the scale was out of sync, that Liam Wilson came in like a couple pounds under, but he had just weighed in like about a half hour before, and he was like on weight, like exactly on weight or something. What was going on there? Talk to us about it.
Pretty much as you said. Wilson said that, he went out to the weigh-in, checked himself on the scales, like literally 20 minutes before or something like that, before he stepped on the scales. Said he was like bang on weight. And then there was rumors during the week that Navarrete was struggling to make weight. And then, there was a clip that was put onto Twitter, so I'm not too sure exactly if it's correct or what it is, because, Twitter's a crazy place. That you could see, like, a member of the commission was kind of touching the scales. He touched the scales a few times. So they were wondering whether they'd, tampered with the scales and, pretty much put it that, Navarrete was, struggling to make weight. So they actually lessened it by a couple of pounds so that Navarrete would be bang on, because Wilson said he weighed in 20 minutes later. He was 3 pounds less than his original weight. So, he did an interview and he was saying if that was the case, he's like, I would be fighting at featherweight, not super featherweight. He's like, if I could come in 3 pounds under, I would be fighting at featherweight. So that, and the fact of, in round 4, he drops Navarrete, and Navarrete was given, 27 seconds after getting up, spitting out his mouthpiece.
I don't know why they don't take a point away for that. They really, because I feel like it's been a lot more common the last several years, the last couple of years at least. And, these fighters know it. It's a tactic. They're like, hey, I'll spit out my mouthpiece, get some extra time. Which, if it's going to work for them, I'm not saying we're encouraging it, but if it's going to work for them, why not? But it's like these referees should start doing that, should start taking a point away. They have their eyes on them the entire time. If you see him and he just spits it out, and it didn't really look like he was, he lost it from a punch, because, sometimes you get hit so hard that it just goes out of your mouth. Obviously, that's a different story. But if they had it in their mouth and then they just voluntarily, essentially spit it out, I think these referees have to start taking a point away, at least to kind of show, hey, look, like, this is happening more and more. Like, they're buying time, because these fighters are going to keep doing it. If it's happening on platforms like this, on ESPN, that's getting all this exposure, obviously these other fighters are seeing that. They're like, oh, okay, why? Maybe I'm going to keep that in the back of my head too, if I ever need that. Because it's true. If these referees and these commissions aren't reprimanding you for it, and you're getting several extra seconds to recover because of that, why not? Why not? But, what if it starts becoming, just egregious, then who's going to take the blame here? Is the commission and the referees like, oh, well, why didn't you guys do something before? Now they're all doing it, and then then they file protests after the fight. But going back to the whole weight thing, what do you think? What do you think is the likelihood that those scales were tampered with? Just if you just had to speculate.
Well, the weigh-ins are conducted by the commission. They're not conducted by Top Rank. Top Rank probably does have a player in it. Navarrete is a Top Rank guy and stuff like that. So they need him to make weight, whereas the commission essentially is they're neutral. So that I can't imagine why they would want to do it. Been at weigh-ins, sometimes the commission does touch the scales because of the fact they're electronic and they turn off. So you need to kind of touch it to stop it from, turning itself off all the time, because when it's on standby, when it's an electronic scale, they turn themselves off. So that could be why he was doing it. I mean, I only saw a short clip on the, on Twitter. And at the same time, sometimes they're only ceremonial weigh-ins. Sometimes the weigh-in is conducted behind closed doors earlier, and then the one that is recorded for TV is actually just, after they've already hydrated and stuff like that, and the weights are actually taken out back. So if there is any discrepancies, that can kind of be conducted behind closed doors, and contracts can be, changed. If they have to do it to a higher weight, you fail to make weight, and then you and the, opponent agree. So sometimes they are just ceremonial ones, like you see on UFC quite a lot of the time. So, a lot of questions to answer, but that, and as you just talked about, the fact that, Wilson was given those 27 seconds to recover due to a pretty blatant mouthpiece spit out from Navarrete, I think really Wilson does deserve a second bite of the cherry, to be honest with you.
They won't give it to him, though.
No, 100%. He did struggle in that fight, so I'm sure Navarrete won't do that. But if they were going to do the right thing, and if it would draw money, like if Liam Wilson was a huge draw in Australia, then maybe they would do that. But I don't think Wilson's going to be able to draw enough money to get Navarrete in the ring. When straight after the fight we saw two Mexicans facing off, and obviously the initial opponent was Oscar Valdez, who couldn't fight due to an injury, so Liam Wilson was drafted in. So going forward, I think we already know it's going to be Navarrete, Oscar Valdez.
That's true. Going back to I just lost my train of thought. What did you just say?
The ceremonial weigh-ins?
Okay, yes. Now I remember. So that's true, and to the point where I forgot until you mentioned it, that a lot of these weigh-ins for these fights, especially the bigger ones, happen earlier in the morning, and they happen before, behind closed doors. With just like the trainers, the teams, the fighters, and the commission. And then, like you said, then they have like a television weigh-in for the fans and on TV, and it's, but they already had made official weight. This is just for, television purposes and all that. I mean, I wonder why. I'd like to know if this happens in Arizona all the time, because this fight was in Arizona. They obviously have their own representatives there, commission. Is there policy to say, oh yeah, we're going to do a weigh-in? Like who has control over the weigh-in protocols? Is it that respective commission for each state, or is it the promoters who have to agree on that, like in terms of the fight contract? Do we know that? Have we ever ran into that? You mean
whether it's going to be live or whether it's going to be ceremonial? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, not just that, but also if it's going to be behind closed doors, like 4 hours before the actual TV one.
I would imagine it's probably drawn up together. I'm sure you can probably do either or if they want to make it, live, like say like a Mayweather McGregor, or if it's going to be a whole card, and they're kind of worried about people missing weight, or maybe the worst, what happens if someone really, really struggles with weight, says nothing, weighs in live on TV, and then collapses.
Right.
In the early days of the UFC, I think a lot of them were live, and you would see a lot of people actually missing weight. And I remember seeing a few, I don't know if it was UFC or some other smaller MMA promotions, where people were literally like pretty much dragged up to the scale, put on the scale, and then pretty much dragged off whilst they, were hydrating and putting the weight back on. So, all of that's not a good look for boxing or MMA. So I think, as far as I know, and a lot of the weigh-ins that I've attended are ceremonial. They've already been done behind the closed doors. The contracts have already been changed for the people that have made weight. People are looking healthier and refreshed because, all of that's, it's not a good look, especially how under the microscope, boxing and MMA are.
Right. No, absolutely. I just think when's the last time something like this has happened that comes to mind? Any recent examples? I'm not talking about recent, like the last year or something, but can you think of any example in terms of a fight where something like this, in terms of a potential manipulated weight scale or anything like that, was done?
Wow.
Because I can't think of anything. I was trying to think the last minute or so, and I can't.
Not where we've...
At least not at this highest profile, like on an ESPN fight or something. Maybe like obviously non-televised fights for local shows or something. But
yes, actually, there was one, and it was Top Rank again. Was it Navarrete again?
No
Top
way.
Top Rank in San Diego last year. They did one, and they said that whoever it was, I can't remember who it was now, jumped on the scale, was on it literally for a few seconds. The commission cleared him and he stepped off, and the opposing team's like manager, coach, or whoever was there and was claiming that they hadn't made weight and was trying to get them to go back on and say, no, you didn't make weight, you were over. And the commission was like, no, and waved it off. And I think it was on ESPN. The main event was Navarrete again that night as well. Against somebody where he kind of struggled a little bit, and Navarrete ended up knocking him out. It was at December, the Pachanga Arena in San Diego.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. What a common denominator that is.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was his fight, though, for the life of me. I can't remember if it was his fight and it was his opponent that missed weight, but it was somebody on that card.
Look at, we're not, this is all alleged behavior, obviously, but is it happening? Has it happened before in the history of boxing?
A very famous one, Daniel Cormier. If you remember, he was overweight. He weighed in with a towel around him, and literally they held the towel and he kind of leant on it, so he was taking some pressure off. So obviously he weighed less. And, everybody was kind of had their head down looking at the scale to see if he'd made weight while he was doing that up above. And, obviously people who were MMA fans saw that picture and it went around. And obviously, I think he probably even maybe admitted now he's retired that he did that.
On purpose. Yeah. No, yeah. But see, that seems like, obviously that's still viewed as manipulation because he's manipulating, but he's manipulating himself.
Right.
Because it's not like that scale, at least from that situation, it's not like that scale was manipulated with, this situation with Navarrete and Wilson seems like it's like the scale. Like you said, there was video of, a gentleman, looks like a commission member, kind of touching the scales multiple times before the fighters got on there. Like, what was he doing? Was he just fixing it because it's protocol, or was he just making sure because it was an electronic scale just to make sure it stays on or something, which could have been the case. But yeah, if Liam Wilson said like how, if he got on there and he weighed, what did he weigh? Like 126 or something. And the fight was at 130. And he says like, what? He's like, wait a minute, I didn't weigh this much. He's like, I weighed myself just before, right. Cause if he could have been like, oh yeah, it doesn't, whatever. He's like, but it is interesting. It is interesting. It's like, oh, I just weighed myself. I'm not 4 pounds, because 4 pounds is a lot. It's a lot. If it was like half a pound, maybe 1 pound, maybe a difference. There's a gray area there. Like, oh, okay. Kind of give it a pass, possibly. But essentially, how much did he say he weighed before?
I think it was 3 pounds. He was 3 pounds less than.
But he was like at 129.
So
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, it is what it is, but when you have a lot of money at stake, especially for the biggest sports network probably in the world, for ESPN, and they're paying your company a contract, top rank, millions, because how much are they getting? Like 90 to 100 million a year for, I think that was the reported number, to put on events. If that's what they're getting, they have to produce. They have to produce events, and if something happens and, he can't fight or he doesn't get the, obviously they want Navarrete to win. That's their guy. And if he, well, I mean, obviously he did, but if he doesn't get the WBO super featherweight title, then that means Liam Wilson can win it. And if Wilson doesn't win it because Navarrete still beats him, if the fight goes on, that means Navarrete has to fight for it again. And this time actually make the weight or whatever it is. So, it's just kind of like, it just puts like a damper in the plans, because then he has to wait like another, 4 or 5 months to fight again and all this, it just prolongs the timeline. But, it is what it is. We had a great fight regardless. But it is interesting, because when I saw that, I was like, I don't remember a time when this was happening or when an example like this happened. But, focusing on the fight itself, like I said, Navarrete was down in round 4, and then Wilson was actually down in round 9, and he ended up being stopped. Wilson was actually the 8-1 underdog. So I'm sure when that first knockdown happened in round 4, I was like, oh wow, if you bet on Wilson and he actually won, that's a big win. That's a big win in the bet books. So, and was it that was the first knockdown of his career for Navarrete?
First time he'd been dropped, yeah.
Right? Like the first time he's been dropped. That's right, yeah. So, yeah, no, he's, like you said, we're not gonna. It'd be nice to see a rematch, just because they both went down. It was an exciting fight, but yeah, we're definitely not gonna see a rematch anytime soon. It's gonna be, if anything, it's gonna be a couple years down the line. But like you said, Oscar Valdez, that's the money fight that they're trying to make. That's that's the ratings, the money. So, 2 Mexican warriors.
Right. That's going to be big. I'm assuming probably Southern California for both of those two. And that's going to bring out a crowd. I think that could do a fairly good size arena.
Where do you think they would put that at? StubHub? Carson, California?
Yeah. Give it a few months. You're looking at, Easter time for Southern California. So you got perfect weather to do an outside arena like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they can fill it.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if they put it on a weekend where there's not much else going on that's going to draw the attention of fans. We just see it in Southern California. Like the Mexican fans, they come out, they support their fighters, and I think it would probably do a really good crowd.
Yeah, I think that's a California fight, but they could put it in Vegas. I can see them putting it in Vegas too.
Headliner, right? That'll be a headliner by itself.
Oh yeah, for sure. That'll definitely be a headliner. Yeah, no, absolutely, that would be a headliner. Either way, that is a good fight. So, and I'm assuming that happens within the next 6 months, because I know Valdez is. Didn't he have a surgery, or didn't he injure himself? What exactly happened?
I think it was his hand. I think he injured his hand, and then that's why he had to drop out. But that's going to be a good fight. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that's definitely a good fight, especially with Shakur Stevenson moving up to 135. Now it's their division again. So, because Shakur Stevenson was better than all of them, so as long as he was there, nobody was going to take his spot. So, moving on. Arnold Barboza Jr. remains undefeated as well, 28-0, with a 10-round unanimous decision win over Jose Pedraza, 29-5-1. This was for the WBO Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. Pedraza just, rotating around with these names from 130 to 140, isn't he? And Barboza, what are we waiting for here?
Right? 100%. Yeah. I feel for him. He's done it the hard way. And it's like one of those ones where you're kind of looking at it like Top Ranker kind of, because he's not got that big name value where he generates a lot of money, that he has to prove himself again and again. It's like, here's another eliminator. Here's a final eliminator. Here's
That's so stupid.
Yeah, because, you know, if he was just selling tickets and putting a lot of bums in seats, he would have one big fight, then boom, title shot. But because he isn't, he is having to do it the hard way because, man, how many times has he fought? This was a little bit closer than I thought. I thought Pedraza looked really good, and I've always said, you know, the show I'm a big fan of Pedraza. I think he boxes really well, and you know, 96, 94, 96, 94. That's not bad. That shows it's close.
Those are close scores. Yeah.
Yeah, which you could think like Barboza was the A side slightly, so he got the rub of maybe a round or two because of you know, Top Ranker hoping that, you know, he's still coming up the hill where Pedraza is kind of going down the hill, it seems. So that just shows, you know, he's still got a little bit left in the tank. But, you know, I think we've said multiple times on the show, kind of feel for him now because he's just getting thrown to the wolves, you know, again and again. But luckily for him, he's that good. He doesn't really ever get blown out. And I'm sure people listening to this are going to be shouting, well, Davis knocked him out. Davis did. But, you know, recently he seems to go the distance and always looks
I would argue, and tell me if you agree with this or not, that is Davis's best win on his resume right now. Because when he fought Pedraza was still pretty dangerous. Like he was he wasn't what he is now, where he's fought all these killers from 130 to 140, and it's just kind of like, you know, a lot of miles on that tank, on that car. When Davis fought him and knocked him out, that was an impressive win.
Mm.
Would you agree with that? That Gervonta Davis that's probably his most significant win in terms of skill and everything, or who else?
Yeah,
and I'm talking about like from our overall, because obviously people are going to say, "Oh, Leo Santa Cruz was there and stuff," and Leo Santa Cruz was, you know, boxing well, but Leo Santa Cruz is a 126 pounder, and Davis even at that point was, you know, 135, 140.
Yeah,
you know, that's why they made the fight like for both of the titles at 130 to 135. Like that, when does that happen? It's just like, wow, man, how much power do you have with the WBA that they're like, oh, this fight is for both titles in two divisions? Like, what the hell? That was a huge moment when that happened, and people just forget about that. But WBA, you know, it's just like, oh, yeah, well, talk to us about it, let's negotiate, and we'll do it. You know, PBC and whatever the relationship had, it obviously worked out for PBC because WBA sanctioned it for two division titles, which was insane. But yeah, Pedraza, you know, 96-94, I didn't see that fight, but based on those scores, it seemed like he gave a good account of himself. Barboza Jr., like you said, I know you touched on earlier, like he's, you know, he doesn't sell tickets like somebody like Jose Ramirez in Fresno, in that area. He's huge in the Central Valley of California. Barboza doesn't really have that fan base, you know. So, you know, maybe that's it. You know, I think from a business perspective, if you look at it from a business perspective, which Top Rank first and foremost is, you know, like all these promoters, somebody like Jose Ramirez is their money guy at 140 pounds. You know, maybe Teofimo Lopez too. You know, Teofimo Lopez and Jose Ramirez at 140 pounds are their money guys. You know, you put Jose Ramirez in the Central Valley, Fresno, he sells out that arena. You know, he might not make the gate money that some other venues make, but on TV it looks great. You know, I'm sure ESPN is like, oh yeah, this guy, he's popular. Teofimo Lopez, obviously, the rub he got from Lomachenko and his personality and stuff, you know, putting him in New York or even Vegas, you know, he draws a sizable crowd. But Barboza, you know, almost at 30 wins, 30 fights in his professional career, he hasn't really done that. I mean, he hasn't really had I don't want to say he hasn't had the chance, because there's been times where he's main evented cards, but, you know, it's not. Is it his fault? I don't really think it's his fault. You know, it's just, you know, he has to compete with the likes of Jose Ramirez and Teofimo Lopez. But I honestly think him Ramirez and Lopez at 140 pounds, it's a toss-up between all those three right now. Like, if you put them all against each other, as of right now, at this moment, I wouldn't be able to tell you who would win. Put them all against each other.
Yeah, that division's stacked, in it. Regis Prograis, Josh Taylor, Teofimo, Ramirez, Barboza, Jack Catterall.
I think Regis Prograis is still, especially after his last fight in Carson, California, out here in LA. I think Regis Prograis is the best fighter at 140 pounds. I know Josh Taylor beat him, but that was a couple of years ago, and that was a close fight. That was a close fight. And Josh Taylor seems to have grown out of the 140 pounds, even though he wants to fight Jack Catterall at 140 still. Let's just wait and see if that happens, because Taylor has said, like, oh, he's a big kid. You can just see by the physical size of him. He's like, oh, yeah, I think you should move up to 147. But I think Regis Prograis is the best guy at 140 pounds at this moment. And, maybe Teofimo, Jose Ramirez, Honor Barboza fight for the number 2 spot. I don't know. But I think Barboza's, Barboza was in that select group like Dimitri Bivol and Zordo Ramirez for a long time, where they were fighting, but just weren't getting a significant fight. They weren't. Bivol now has got Canelo. He won that fight, which was huge for him. Then he got Ramirez, and vice versa. Ramirez got Bivol, a significant name. Bivol beat Ramirez. Ramirez took that loss, but now you can't really include them in the same camp. In terms of the high level of fighters right now in the current sport that we're looking at, the landscape, who else is there with Barboza in terms of like, you have all these fights that you've done almost at 30 wins and you haven't fought a significant name. Who else is there with him? Because it was Bivol, it was Ramirez, and now they're out, at least temporarily.
Munguia.
Oh, yeah, Munguia, Barboza. Anybody else? Like, at least at that echelon? I think it's just them.
Yeah, off the top of my head, Munguia was the one that kind of jumped out. Yeah, there's the obvious ones, I guess, without literally scrolling through BoxRec.
Like, why put Ramirez against Richard Comey?
Right.
Like, isn't that happening next month, March?
Yeah, and it's hardly sold any tickets.
I don't understand that. Why not? If you're putting Barboza and Ramirez 1 month apart, why not just put them together in March or April? Obviously Top Rank has a plan. We're not saying that they don't have a plan. And, they're business-wise and matchmaking, like, they're good. They've proven they have a track record, but, why not put them together? Was there an injury? Didn't Ramirez have an injury or something like that?
Well, there was talk for a while, wasn't there, that I remember Rick Meridian saying that, they tried to do, was it Teofimo Lopez and Ramirez, and then they couldn't get that through. And I know that Pedraza was shouting for it for the longest time, and he wanted Teofimo Lopez as well, and just they were kind of like dancing around for a long time. So maybe that was just it. They were kind of like, we owe Barboza a fight. We need Pedraza to have a fight. Let's just stick them together instead of dancing around in circles and not having any cards.
Let me pose this to you real quick. We'll touch on the Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis news and situation a little later for this episode. But let's just say that fight doesn't happen. Ryan Tank doesn't happen in April, whatever, or the next couple of months. Barboza. Ryan has to fight soon because he didn't fight in January. He's just in activity right now. But let's just say the summertime, Barboza Ryan at 140 pounds. I know it's two different promoters. I understand that. But suspend your disbelief for a second. Barboza Ryan at 140. What do you think?
Just on the fight, or who wins? Is it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What do you think about the matchup?
Good matchup. Strong opponent.
I like that.
Barboza, he's hittable, so it's a good matchup stylistically, I think, for Ryan, because, Barboza isn't the most elusive, but he's game. He'll come. He'll keep coming.
Barboza could fight.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good, like, I think Davis is a lot more dangerous than Barboza is for Ryan. I think Davis is more dangerous, but it's a huge money fight, so obviously, they're going to look into that. But in terms of the development and kind of progress throughout your professional career, I think a Barboza Ryan at 140 is a great matchup. That's a great matchup.
Do you know what I've always thought, Dan, is I know it's obviously not his personality, but I always thought that he misses a trick, Barboza. If he could invest in some PR and kind of gather that like East Los Angeles, Lakers, Dodgers type of thing.
Yeah.
Like how
he's Mexican.
Do you know like how the British fans like Warrington, he always plays off Leeds United. Other fighters do the same thing. And I always thought, I know it's not probably his personality, he doesn't come across like that, but if he could have just gathered that, the East Los Angeles thing is huge, dude. Imagine how many fighters, how many people, fans. There's
a comedian, a Mexican-American comedian named Felipe Esparza. Mm-hmm. He's popular. And he lives in LA. He grew up in LA. And he also has a podcast that he does weekly, or I think he does maybe a couple of times a week or once a week or something. I don't know. But he's been doing it for years. He puts it on YouTube, and I think it's also on podcast platforms or something. Arnold Barboza, sometime last year, was on an episode.
Oh wow!
With him, because I remember I came across it, and I thought I texted it to you, but I don't think I did. Because I remember I saw the title and I was like, what? I was like, that can't be the same guy, and I clicked it, and it was Arnold Barboza Jr. And he was on there with I don't know if it was his managers, I don't know who it was, somebody, but. I was like, oh, you have a connection like that, use it, but I kind of watched a little bit of the interview, and how that podcast works is they kind of go random directions and stuff, but Barboza wasn't really getting a ton of questions. I don't think it was really about him. They asked him sometimes, but it's more of like a comedy podcast and stuff, but he obviously has that connection. Like, you're right. He's Mexican. He lives in Southern California, I believe, West Covina, Glendora area or something like that, just outside of LA, which is 25 miles outside of LA. They should use it. They have Top Rank has Jose Ramirez, and I know they've had Barboza fight in Southern California, and I get it. He hasn't really proven to be the ticket seller that they want him to be, and I understand that. But what is he missing? What is he missing? That's there's a lot of fighters like that, but because he's from Southern California, he's Mexican, he could fight, he's undefeated. You're right, you can build something around that. But what is he missing? I
think it's just personality. He's very neutral. You don't love him. You don't hate him. He's not funny. He's not unfunny. He's just kind of, you don't, you respect him because he's done it the hard way. Right. And he does get a few knockouts now and again. He does put in good performances. He's not a boring fighter to watch because he's there to be hit, and he also hits them. He is good to watch. But I think that it's just he's a little bit neutral in terms of his personality, and I always think he's kind of missed a trick. And I guess you can't create something out of nothing, right? Like if he did try to do it, we'd probably be like, he's trying too much. He looks kind of fake. But I always thought that he could have played off that more because there's such a fan base there for him, but we'll see.
We'll see. Let's see how it works, but he's missing that piece, because he could fight, he's undefeated, seems like a nice kid, but I think that's a good way to how you described it. Like, you don't like him, you don't hate him, you're kind of neutral, like, oh yeah, he's a good fighter, You know, he works hard. You know, he's obviously trains hard, and you know, for one reason or another, he just hasn't got that significant opponent yet across from him, and he's almost at 30 fights.
Who's that guy in WWE? Is it Heyman that comes down as the manager and he talks?
Paul Heyman, yeah.
That's what he needs, one of them.
Yeah, or like a crazy dad or something.
Yeah,
look at
like Danny Garcia. Yeah,
that's true though. That's true. Like, look at Danny Garcia. You know, Danny Garcia. You know, he'll talk in interviews, but like, I wonder if there was a way to measure how much like your manager, your trainer, or your father has increased your profile. You know, in terms of publicity because of their mouth and their personality. That'd be so interesting to see, because it's true. Angel Garcia was definitely a mouthpiece for has always been a mouthpiece for Danny Garcia.
Yeah.
And some people would tune in just to see him talk.
Sam Jones, who's been on the show, that used to kind of do that for Joe Joyce when Joe Joyce was first hitting the scene and was very uncomfortable. You know, obviously Sam's not with him now, and Joe's kind of grown into the interviews more. But at the beginning, yeah, he was very robotic, and Sam Jones kind of covered that little piece of the pie for him.
Right. Same thing. Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Mm-hmm. His dad, Ruben Guerrero. Mm-hmm. You know, he was also a personality. Mm-hmm. Especially when he fought Mayweather. You know, Ruben Guerrero was up there yelling to Mayweather, like, "Why can you guys like this guy?" Point at Mayweather. He's like, "He's a woman beater" or something like that. Like, he's just going off on him. You know, that he has like this like old school, you know, Mexican like gangster look with the hat and the big facial hair and the button up shirts all the way to the top. You know, it's funny. Like, but it's true though. Like, because Robert Guerrero was he's a religious guy, I believe, or he was at the time. I'm sure he still is. You know, very calm guy. You know, kind of. I would describe Robert Guerrero as somebody like Arnold Barboza. Like, you don't like him, you don't hate him, but you respect him. You know. But Ruben Guerrero, you know, obviously him getting the Mayweather fight was big, but his dad, Ruben Guerrero, talking for him in interviews and all that stuff, people were like, "Oh, this guy's fun." Like, you know, they tuned in. It was entertainment. Maybe that's it. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's it. He needs some type of sidekick or mouthpiece to kind of hype him up. You know, yeah, you're right. Like, or like Eddie Hearn. Look at Eddie Hearn. He does all these interviews. He's all over the world all the time. And like when he's promoting something like a fight or a fighter, like obviously he knows the art of promoting. But if you listen to him and you're like listening to what he's saying, you really believe that he's saying it because he believes in it. Like and he's mastered that art in promoting, where he's like talking about it, and it's just like, man, like you really, he has you hook, line, and sinker sometimes.
Just look at the views he does. You know, it's
yeah, exactly. That, you know, that's true. I mean, I think out of all the promoters in the world right now, in terms of being a mouthpiece for their events and fighters, I think Eddie Hearn is the best one.
Yeah,
like talking wise, nobody can touch him. You know, Bob Arum, you know, he's still there. People will listen to him, but he's older. It's not really the same anymore. De La Hoya does like limited interviews here and there, you know, but I do feel like if De La Hoya, I do feel honestly 100% that if De La Hoya could go out and about how Eddie Hearn does it, you know, go on somebody like Ariel Helwani's podcast, you know, Eddie Hearn goes on doing all these YouTube channels or whatever. He does all these interviews or whatever. I feel like De La Hoya could be on that same level or even surpass Eddie Hearn, especially in the United States, because De La Hoya is already a big name in the United States and Mexico. Like the weight he has on his name, De La Hoya, and he still has it. Like, he has so much potential there. And I get it. Maybe he's like, oh, you know, like I've had this promotion for promoter. I've been a promoter for 20 years now, and you know, I get it. You know, sometimes it's just kind of like clockwork. But man, if De La Hoya could go out there and do interviews like that and be around and promote his fighters and promote his names, you know, like use his star power to give a rub to his events and to his fighters, by selling them and promoting them and interviews and all that stuff, that's huge. That is huge. You know, like, and I honestly feel like he would overtake Eddie Hearn, at least in the United States. You know, if he kind of, and I know it's a lot. Eddie Hearn works hard. He's all over the place all the time. But I think De La Hoya, pound for pound, his star power, nobody can touch his star power in terms of promoter. You know, Bob Arum can't touch it. Eddie Hearn can't touch it. If De La Hoya wants to use his star power, nobody touches him, which is nuts. But, you know, obviously he has his reasons why, you know, he doesn't operate that way. But, man, I'm telling you, it's like the whole Davis-Ryan thing. You know, we were talking about in the past, and then I think Al Dawson of The Insider had mentioned it too, and we talked about different stuff. Like, before Davis left Mayweather, imagine Ryan and Gervonta Davis up there on the stage, and then De La Hoya and Mayweather next to their respective fighters, and them using their star power to promote that event and to promote their respective fighters. Just imagine that. Like, I don't know. It's huge, man. It's huge. And like, if De La Hoya reaches out to you, like if he reaches out to somebody like Ariel Helwani here in the United States, who I think records his show in New York. I know he's done interviews, I think, with Ariel Helwani, but I think he did it like via Zoom or something. I don't think he's ever been.
Yeah. The recent one was Zoom. Yeah.
But if De La Hoya reaches out to Ariel Helwani, he times it where like, oh, Ryan's going to fight or so-and-so, or I have an event coming up. Even if it's a smaller event, like a Golden Boy fight or like here in LA, if De La Hoya flies to New York, and I know it's money, I understand that, but and goes in person with Ariel Helwani or somebody, there, you don't think somebody like Ariel Helwani is going to tell him like, oh yeah, come, he's gonna accommodate him, like, yeah, let me talk to you, because it's Oscar De La Hoya, one of the best fighters ever. But,
happy birthday!
Yeah, he just had a birthday. Yeah. The Golden Boy. I don't think he's 50 yet, but he's getting there.
Is he close? It might be his 50th. I can't remember exactly.
Maybe he is 50. He might be 50. I don't know, but I know he was right up there. He's getting closer. Something like that. But yeah, happy birthday to the Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya. But I'm telling you, man, he has star power.
50. That was his 50th.
Oh wow, 50 years old now. There it is. Well, he made it. Here's to another 50. But I don't know. Do you think it's more like De La Hoya maybe just doesn't like? He's very selective, and I understand that. But you're very selective on who you want to give your star power rub to.
I think at times with Oscar, because he's had a very, very, very love-hate relationship with the media, because obviously some of the stuff that's happened, and some of the stuff that he's done, and he's been revealed. I think at times, that's probably why he didn't do too much. But I think, and I don't know whether it's because we've got that potential Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Davis fight coming up. Recently, he has done a lot more because he's been on, Ariel Helwani, like you said. He's been on some other shows. He's been tweeting a lot more about his fighters and stuff like that. So, let's just hope it's not a one-off because he's trying to promote that one fight. Let's hope that. And I think a lot of his interviews as well, he seems a lot calmer. Like, and I know he's had troubles with drinking drugs in the past, and maybe he's a lot more sober or something. I thought his interviews, he's been a lot better, a lot calmer, because you've seen him get into, arguments with Dana White, arguments with Eddie Hearn. He would fly off the handle a little bit. So I don't know, maybe he's just happier. He's in a better place. He's grown, he's matured, but whatever it is, it looks good on him. And I think the interviews that he does now are a lot better than they used to be. And maybe he's thought that. Maybe he listened to you, Danny, on the podcast, say that he should do this promotion. And maybe that's why he's decided now he's coming out and he's doing a lot more on Twitter and, other YouTube channels. But yeah, I think, like you said, he can kill it because he has got a good sense of humor at times. And I think he does, yeah. Yeah, and I think he's been interviewed really, really well. And I think that could only be good for Golden Boy, especially for some of the stars, coming up like Virgil Ortiz. If he could get a little bit of that rub from Oscar De La Hoya, Alexis Rocha, someone we love on the show, it's only going to look good for them.
Right, yeah. No, yeah. And then, he obviously has a big Mexican fan base, Mexican American fan base, Mexican fan base. And I know he at times he takes advantage of that fan base and not in a bad way, but like in terms of the media, like he'll do interviews with certain outlets or something that are geared towards that fan base and stuff, especially in the LA, Southern California area. Because Mexicans, Mexican Americans, Latinos, they're huge boxing fans. Like they'll support, and they like their Oscar De La Hoya, Julio Cesar Chavez. Who else in the last 30, 35 years, 40, whatever years, who are the top two Mexican fighters? Like whether it's Mexican, Mexican American, whatever. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Not Jr. Sorry, I don't know why I said Jr. Julio Cesar Chavez, Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe you can throw Marquez in there, Eric Morales and stuff, but I'm talking about star power. Like they crossed over into more than a fighter. Like they are legit celebrities. Chavez, De La Hoya, Canelo. Anybody else?
Man, not really. I remember we were in Arizona for the Chavez Jr. fight, and Chavez Sr. was there, and
oh yeah,
that guy just literally walks on water to the Mexican fans.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
He's like a god.
Yeah,
he is. He's like a god to Mexican fans and Mexican American fans too. But he's, like you said, yeah. When we were in Phoenix for the Chavez Jr. Jacobs fight, he just took a step. He would wave at people, and people were like, "Oh my god!" And then he go and took pictures with people, and people just swarmed him. He's a star.
Because the next ones who spring to mind, and they're nowhere near. They're nowhere near in terms of that. We'll probably Eric Morales, Barrera.
Yeah. But
they're significantly levels below Canelo.
Fighting wise, they were excellent fighters. They fought their asses off. But we're talking about star power, like crossing that threshold into becoming a celebrity. That wasn't them. They were famous boxers, but Canelo, De La Hoya, Chavez became famous people.
Who's the biggest? Obviously, I'm not Mexican. Obviously, who is right? Yeah, with a Michael Shepard. It's a very common Mexican name.
Miguel
Chavez is the biggest, I assume. Like, do you think in most households he would be the biggest, or do you think generational?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. But I think De La Hoya gives him a run for his money too. Like that's close. It's close. But Canelo's there too, though, because Canelo's been at the top for 10 years now. They're all kind of close now because they're all like Canelo's got that new generation.
Yeah,
he's hit that new generation of fame. Like De La Hoya still, he still has the name power, the weight of his name. Chavez still has across the generations. Chavez is a lot bigger in Mexico, obviously, because he's from Mexico. He's Mexican. And he's still involved in a lot of stuff in the country of Mexico. I know his kids or his daughter or something like that is on some reality show out there. And then he's also kind of a part of it. And he's been honored by like the Mexican government, by the president and stuff like that. So he's still, if you pound for pound, he's way bigger in Mexico than he is in the United States, but he's still huge in the United States. I'm telling you, man, I know we're kind of talking in circles here, but De La Hoya has star power. He has star power, and he still has it. And like, if he really wants, to give a rub to these fighters that he has and stuff like that, like that's what he has to do. Just have to push them. I mean, why not? And if they lose or he's promoting them and they're losing, well, at least he's trying to bang for your buck. But yeah, it's insane, man. It's insane. But Barboza, real quick. Barboza, Teofimo next, 140.
It didn't look like Teofimo wanted it, right? Remember when he was in the ring and they caught on camera turning to Cal Moretti or Bruce Trampler, and he said something about he didn't want to fight him, he wanted a bigger fight.
Oh yeah. That wasn't this past weekend. That was last year, I think. Yeah.
So that's an interesting one, when you think about it. Like, who is next for Teofimo? Like, if you were the matchmaker, like, do you give him
it can't
another
be
one?
Pedraza now because I think they wanted to put him against Pedraza, right? But it looks like Barboza got him first.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, like, okay, is it Barboza? Let Barboza recover maybe in the summer. Teofimo Barboza.
You would think so, right? Because if you think about it, like keeping it in-house, like they tend to do, where do they go? Or do they just go, you know what? Like, we don't know what Teofimo's got due to, like, unfortunately, all of the troubles outside of the ring that, seems to go through. Do they, like, and I'm going to say cash out, maybe that's too strong a word, or maybe do they do like a sink or swim? Do they go, you know what? Let's get him in there with like a Regis Prograis. He's available. Big name.
They're gonna axe out Regis Prograis as long as they can, as hard as they can.
Danny, no.
They are. They are. That's how you act like this is surprising. Like, this is what promoters do.
2023. Let's be optimistic. Come on.
Oh, please. We've been saying that for the last several years of this show. Like, oh, this is the year of, like, they're like, hopefully we get the fights. Like, we always see hopefully, and we've gotten great fights. We've gotten great fights, but I mean, we've been around it long enough to know that it is a business first and foremost. Whether they say it's not, all these promoters, it is a business first and foremost. So they want keep more money when you have two fighters that you represent. Keep it in house, Because
if you look at it realistically, if you look at the top 10, if you're saying Regis Prograis out, Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall are supposed to fight, but obviously he keeps getting, postponed due to injury.
I think they're going to fight at a catch weight.
Right. So you're looking at either the Jose Ramirez, if he wins, if he's successful next month, or, as you said, Arnold Barboza. He's already fought Sandor Martin. Gary Antoine Russell is obviously PBC, so he's unfortunately out. Steve Spark from Australia, maybe. And then number 10 is Jorge Pedraza, who is now that was his fourth loss. So I imagine it's going to have to be Jose Ramirez if he wins, or we stick him in there with Arnold Barboza. And, as Teofimo touched on before, I think his contract does say that, one of the fights should be a pay-per-view. He wants those pay-per-view points.
I know him and his dad have said that, right? They've said that publicly. That's like, oh, we have that in our contract.
Yeah.
But
so that leads you to believe the big name, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way Top Rank would do it, is like, well, it would have to be a big name for it to be worth it. Like, they're not going to. I mean, essentially, unless you're like PBC putting all their fights on pay-per-view, which it's like, what's going on here? But Top Rank, it would have to be. Would a Ramirez Teofimo Lopez fight at 140? Would that be pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know what else. At least in the United States, I don't know what other name would be pay-per-view for Teofimo at 140. Like, business-wise, Jose Ramirez, right?
The biggest one, right?
We're talking about Top Rank fighters. We're not, obviously there's Ryan and other fighters, but we're talking about in-house Top Rank.
So can we use Josh Taylor because of the Frank Warren Top Rank?
You could, but I'm talking about pound for pound financially. I think Ramirez Teofimo is a bigger pay-per-view fight. Might not be by a lot, but it's bigger overall than a Taylor Teofimo at 140.
Wow.
In the United States, yes.
Yeah.
In the UK, Taylor Teofimo, especially if they fight over there, obviously it's huge. But
because they would probably just do pay-per-view for both. How could you though? Because it's going to be
it wouldn't. No, they wouldn't do pay-per-view over here in the States. And if they do, they were going to have to charge like $20.
Yeah, sorry, that's a stupid idea. Yeah, well, yeah. The Jose Ramirez, obviously due to the fan base and stuff like that he's got.
Yeah,
he's struggling this time. The tickets weren't looking good recently because someone posted a picture on Twitter. But we are several weeks away. So
he's still got time. I think people will show up for him. Like every time he's fought there, he's his crowd has showed up, and there's not a lot of stuff that goes on in that area, like in terms of sports. So like major sports like that. So they're going to show up. But yeah, Ramirez Teofimo, if they need a pay-per-view fight, I think that's the only fight that makes sense. Unless they want to cross promoter lines, which for a pay-per-view fight, I don't see it. But you never know. Because, at 140 right now, essentially, 135, 140, who is your pay-per-view king right now? And when I'm not talking about they sold 300,000, 400,000 buys or something. I'm talking about, because, we see reports, you can't really believe these numbers anymore. You just can't. We don't know who's telling the truth. So take all of them with a grain of salt. We just don't know. But from 135 to 140, if there's one guy who you're going to fight on pay-per-view to make the most bang for your buck as much as you can, it's probably Davis, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's the one that springs to mind.
And then Ryan?
Going off social media, you would say, yeah. I mean, going off the random people at work that will speak to me about boxing because they know that obviously I'm a big boxing geek, the only one they ever approached me about is Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, he's popular. Yeah, but it's also like you said, his social media reach is huge. There's people who find out about him because of social media. And then he's hung out with the Paul brothers and all these YouTubers and influencers. And all these younger kids see him and they're like, oh, mom, dad, Ryan Garcia. And they're like, who's that? He's a fighter. Like, what? And then dad would look him up and he's a fighter. Like, oh, a boxer. Sometimes it's the kids or the younger generation who notice him and they tell the parents or the older generation about him. And then or even the parents kind of just get exposure on him on social media. I remember one of my family members, she's younger, early 20s or something. She had asked me about him 3 years ago or something. And it was right after he got he's been knocking out people, and then all those clips of him getting the knockout were going viral, millions and millions of views. I remember she's like, oh yeah, he's one of the best boxers in the world. Did you see how he knocked that guy out? But they're casual fans. So it doesn't upset me. And I'm just like, oh yeah, he's good. Yeah, he knocked that guy out so fast. They say he's one of the best fighters in the world, And I remember it was yesterday. I was just like, yeah. I was like, well, hopefully he's still a young guy. He's still developing, but hopefully it turns out. But I'm not gonna get upset because these types of people, they're casual fans, and every sport has a casual fan base, But the fact that was happening and reaching that casual fan, somebody who's not hardcore like we are, I'm just like, wow. I was like, De La Hoya's got something to build with here. Regardless if the kid complains about his contract and then complains about his fights and, complained to get out of his contract to renegotiate, which is whatever. That's something that we've touched on before. He's got star power, but De La Hoya developed him into that. He was already, maybe he had some type of foundation when De La Hoya found him, but you don't think when Golden Boy and De La Hoya picked him up, you don't think that skyrocketed him? Obviously it did. It skyrocketed him, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Davis is your money guy, 135, 140, and then it's Ryan. But yeah, Barboza. I think Barboza Teofimo happens this year because I don't know who Teofimo fights next. In the meantime, I don't.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with that.
Yeah. Moving on, we talked a lot about that whole 140 pound and stuff. We were on there for a minute. This past Saturday, the 4th of February, from the Madison Square Garden Theater in New York on DAZN, Amanda Serrano gets a 10-round unanimous decision win over Erica Cruz Hernandez by scores of 97-93 and 98-92 twice. Amanda Serrano is now the undisputed featherweight champion of the world. So looking ahead, the Katie Taylor match was announced. It will be happening in Ireland. Wasn't there, as of today or as of that day, Wasn't there an issue with Croke Park? Is it Croke Park or Croke Park?
Yeah, supposedly, according to Eddie, he was saying that like due to the cost that they want them to cover for like security and stuff like that, it's actually going to make it more expensive to do Croke Park than it would be to do, the big Wembley Stadium. So they're actually looking at I think it's the Aviva Stadium, which is, significantly smaller. So kind of a downer, for her.
I saw Conor McGregor tweeted that he would pay.
He would sponsor it, yeah. He would use one of his, like Proper 12 or something to sponsor it to try to help Eddie cover the cost of security. And then Eddie put, let's talk or, something along those lines. Like,
what? I could
talk about it.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that interaction. I was like, oh, wow. I think Conor McGregor is the guy to get it over the line.
Clever.
And I think it's going to help.
Super clever because good publicity for Conor because of all the stuff that he's done and how like a lot of people say he's turned a lot of the Irish against him for the stuff that he's done and said. For him to do that and he gets the Irish fans,
That's great PR.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. He's such a businessman, that guy.
Yeah, that's great PR, man.
So we'll see, if he does it and then the fight goes ahead due to Conor McGregor and, he gets to
how much more, because I never thought that the second fight was going to make more money than the first fight. Pound for pound. I think that fight last year was, a perfect storm for them. But I didn't think this second fight was going to be as big. But if McGregor gets involved, they might not make as much money as they did in New York because obviously in the United States, boxing-wise, you make more financially because it's just more expensive over here. But it's like, for example, Eddie Hearn said when they made that first fight last year between Serrano and Katie Taylor in New York City, Madison Square Garden, he admitted it. He's like, if Jake Paul never got involved and got attached to Amanda Serrano, he's like, this fight, probably would have happened. He's like, financially the demands were too much. It didn't work out business wise. But he said Jake Paul getting involved pushed the fight over the line. And Conor McGregor getting involved now, and Jake Paul's obviously still involved with Serrano. Conor McGregor getting involved now to get the fight at Croke Park, to get the financials in order. And McGregor's obviously going to promote the fight because he's attached to it. It's going to literally maximize their earning potential for that rematch. I'm sure Eddie Hearn was like, oh my God, this is great. I'm sure when he saw that tweet, he's like, oh, this is, I would be happy from a business perspective. I'd be like, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. Because I really don't see how, I mean, unless it's like business negotiation tactics behind the scene, I really don't see how McGregor is not involved in this fight now. He publicly tweeted it. Eddie Hearn responded to him, and they talked back and forth. And I'm sure they've already talked. Eddie Hearn's the type of guy that would go directly to Conor wherever he's at and meet him in person and say, hey, let's figure this out. I'm telling you, man, it's back to back, so far, at least potentially. You have Jake Paul getting involved in your first fight, which maximizes that earning potential and made that fight so memorable. I mean, when's the last time a female fight had that exposure, that popularity, that interest?
Not in our generation, and then I wasn't around.
I can't think about it, right? Like, and I'm talking about boxing. Obviously, we had Ronda Rousey, UFC, but that's their sport. That's mixed martial arts. In boxing, when's the last time, if any, did we have a female headlining fight that sold out one of the most famous arenas in the world, Madison Square Garden, 20,000 or whatever, in one of the biggest cities in the world, New York City, and got all this, publicity, exposure. It was huge, like cross-promotional, everything. When's the last time that's happened?
It probably hasn't. Katie Taylor Serrano one it's probably the biggest fight, biggest women's fight, in terms. I
mean, I know there wasn't a knockout, and the women don't really have, there's not a lot of knockouts and knockdowns, but there was a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah,
there's a lot of eyeballs on the event. which made the hype and the atmosphere a lot stronger, a lot more exciting. So, it's a publicity. But Eddie Hearn, Jake Paul gets involved in the first one. He'll still be involved, at least for now. Well, I don't see why not. He'll still be involved in the second one. And you have Conor McGregor, who is potentially going to get involved as well. Man, that's nuts. That is nuts. But I know they faced off, right? Katie Taylor was in attendance. She came into the ring and they kind of posed and all that stuff. So obviously that's tentatively penciled in for maybe this summer. We'll see. I know they're trying to get the venue details situated, but Serrano did become the first undisputed champion, male or female, of the four-belt era from Puerto Rico. And she became emotional about it in an interview, I think, post-fight and all that. So whether, people look at it male or female, like, oh, no, it should be separate. It's not the same. It's not doesn't carry the same weight as the men do. Being objective as possible here, male or female, undisputed champion in the four-belt era from Puerto Rico. She's in the history books, at least in that form. So congratulations to her. And let's see if the Taylor fight, I don't see how the Kate Taylor fight doesn't happen. They don't really have any other options, right?
No, and especially in terms of, how big a fight it is, the purses for both of them. Yeah, unfortunately, at the minute, those, the girls have to just kind of do a round robin of all the big names if they're going to get, relatively, big purses and get as much publicity onto the sport as you can, because you've got like a group of, really good girl fighters, and then there's a huge gap, in terms of really just kind of, journeyman fighters towards the bottom. There's none of that like middle tier like we have in the men's side at the minute anyway.
Right. And then moving on, Alicia Baumgartner retains her undisputed super featherweight titles with a 10-round unanimous decision win over Elham Makhailed. I don't know if I said that right. I hope I did. Who takes the second loss of her professional career. Makhailed was knocked down 2 times in the fight, which I thought Baumgartner was going to close the show, but it ended up going like a lot of female fights, the full 10 rounds. So even though you knocked her down twice, like, oh, maybe you're going to go over a knockout. But the only fighter we really have that just knocks people out has been
Savannah Marshall.
Savannah Marshall, huh? I know she didn't knock down or knock out Clarissa Shields, but from a commonality standpoint, Savannah Marshall's been the only one in the female side of boxing who's pretty much been doing that, right?
Yeah, Serrano does have a lot of knockouts, but a lot of those have come, unfortunately, against a lot of lesser opponents. When she's stepped up and fought a lot of the bigger names, she hasn't managed to get rid of those girls.
Yeah, well, when you go up in weight, it's obviously a lot harder to find bigger people.
Alicia Baumgartner, though, she's good. She's one of my favorites, on the women's side of things, because she is heavy-handed and she does go in search of the knockouts. And, she did manage to get, Mellum down a couple of times. And, she understands both sides of the game. She's a good fighter in the ring, and she's a great PR, outside of the ring as well. She's got good looks, stuff like that. She sells that side of it, and she also talks really well. Her and Michaela Meyer going back and forth, and when they were giving each other gifts and saying certain things, she really does have the whole package. And
I thought it was funny when her and Michaela Meyer fought, and they were doing interviews, I think, for Sky, like the week of the fight. There was a clip where Alicia Baumgartner, there's 2 reporters in the middle of them, 2 broadcasters, and then Mayer's on one side and Baumgartner's on the other, and then Baumgartner keeps like cussing. And then Mayer's like, what are you doing? Like, they told you not to cuss. And she's like, I don't care. What are they going to do? And Mayer's like, what are you doing? We're on TV. Like, you could tell she was like getting mad. She's like, you got to be professional. It's just like, I know she speaks well, but it's just kind of like if she's gonna go off the cuff like that, And I know Sky Sports, they're like one of those big channels or one big conglomerate companies over there, so they don't, they're on the airwaves over there where that shouldn't be done. So I thought that was funny. I just remember that clip, but yeah, Bumgarner. I think her and Mayer are gonna end up fighting again.
It's the biggest one for them, right? So I think it's.
That's the nature of the whole female side of boxing, is that the depth, it's just not there.
Yeah.
I think Clarissa Shields had tweeted something about, she kind of tweeted something after this event saying, "Oh, you guys, I'm gonna say it or something." And she was like, "I know you guys say we don't have like the depth that the men do, but at least we all fight each other." Well, yeah, you guys all fight each other because there's not really any other options, especially in terms of especially in terms of making money. You have to fight each other.
That's all relative. What she said is all relative. There isn't any depth, so that you have to fight each other. So
yeah, so like that's just the nature of the game. Like, look at the men. If you had the same amount of talent as the men, and making all that money, like then we see what's happening with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, Ryan and Tank Davis right now, and all these other fighters, and they're fighting in house and all this stuff, like, which sucks, but so I guess it's like a double-edged sword. It's like you don't have the depth, but you have to fight. You all have to fight each other because you just no way around it. But
the thing, and I've said this before about the women's side, is they keep pushing it on us and pushing it on us and pushing it on us, and some fights are good, but again, they all went the distance. And I'm going to keep saying it, that if they keep doing it and they keep showing it, people are going to get put off, because unfortunately pretty much every time you get scorecards of like 99, 89, 99, 90 and stuff like that, because one ends up being significantly better than the other, and at the minute they don't have the power or the technique or whatever it is to be able to knock the other one out. And the reason that normally we love boxing is because somebody like Deontay Wilder, for example, he can be 7, 8, 9 rounds down, but he has that power to turn the other one's lights off.
Yep.
And at the minute, you can watch 5 or 6 rounds of a women's fight, and you're like, okay, this is done. And you can go and get a coffee, go and get a beer, go get some food or whatever, because it just doesn't happen unless it's an A-grade fighter like Savannah Marshall is fighting, someone significantly lower than them, because even Clarissa Shields, the self-appointed GOAT, she's hardly got any knockouts at all. So, unfortunately for me,
but she is the best female fighter pound for pound on the female side.
Amanda Serrano.
Okay, Serrano.
Okay, Taylor. Dude, Clarissa Shields is fighting in a division where you can go onto BoxRec and like the 4th or 5th best fighter in that division is something like 8-6. Maricela Cornejo, who lives in around here, and obviously we know who she is. She's like the 6th or 7th best in the world at that division, and they're journeyman people. Journeyman. Clarissa Shields, unfortunately for her, I'm not saying that she's not good. She's obviously good. She won an Olympics and stuff like that, but she fights at a weight category where there's nobody. Exactly the same as Amanda Nunes in the UFC. She's a world title holder in 2 divisions, and in the heavier division, there is just her. And they created that division for her and Cyborg, and there's nobody else to fight. And unfortunately, that's what it is like for Clarissa Shields at this minute. And I'm not blaming her. It's just unfortunate that's what it is. All the good women's talent is around Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano's division.
That's true, yeah. And Serrano, how many divisions has she went through? Regardless, like 7. If you want to be 7,
yeah,
yeah. So that's impressive too. Whether the depth is there or not, that's very impressive. You're right. I think Shields, she's obviously gotten more exposure, at least up until before last year. And she came from the Olympics, gold medalist and all that. And, but when you break it down like that, I think I could agree with you. Yeah.
It's just unfortunate for her, and I'm not blaming her because she can't help that. It's just, there isn't women, I don't know, then maybe it's because it's just a higher weight category, and the most common weight for a woman, I guess, must be a lot lower because that's the ones that we have at the minute, or, women who are taller or whatever, obviously go into different sports or something like that, like basketball maybe over here and stuff. So, at the minute, we just don't have that weight category. And it's the same for Amanda Nunes in the UFC. So it's they're all relatively smaller and lower weight categories.
Yeah.
Natasha Jonas moved up 3 weight categories because she was able to do the same thing. She picked up a world title at a higher weight division because there's just lack of talent.
Yeah. I mean, they got to do what they got to do, right? It's just like, they can't stick around at one division for multiple years like the men do because the depth is there. They have to be like, oh, well, if I'm fine at 130, but there's nobody here and I have to go to 140, they're going to do it.
Yeah, because if you look on BoxRec, there's like, I don't know, like in middleweight, for example, there's like 20 names, on the middleweight BoxRec around the world for the women's. Where on BoxRec for men's, there's probably 20 pages of people in that weight division. So, that's just where we are at the minute. And hopefully it turns around and it is more like the UFC in years to come. And we end up remembering in years to come, like, oh, remember that time when there was only like 5 or 6 good women's fighters. And now we have, a whole host of them. Because I enjoy watching the women's UFC. It's a hell of a lot better. A lot good, closer fights. And you get those oh my god moments, which unfortunately we don't get that because there's just a severe lack of knockouts. I think on this card there was 5 women's fights and only one of them didn't go the distance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like it's a surprise. Like it's just what happens. Do we need to add 1 more minute to each round? I know that's been a controversial topic there. Maybe not. I know there's like medical advice against it, at least from the WBC's claims, but who knows? Let's see how it works as we go forward. Moving on, fight preview this upcoming Saturday, the 11th of February from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. Rey Vargas, 36-0, goes up against O'Shaquie Foster, 19-2 for the WBC super featherweight title. Okay, first off, the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas is huge. The professional wrestling, WWE just had their Royal Rumble there. Their pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble. And that place was, at least on, I don't know what they announced attendance, but I think it holds like 40,000.
It's big. Yeah.
What?
They're going to be giving a hell of a lot of tickets away.
I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe Mexican fan base, Rey Vargas, but it's not like Rey Vargas is Canelo Alvarez. The Alamo Dome in San Antonio, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe people might show up, and I know San Antonio has like a downtown area. They'll go out for fight night and then go out after. Maybe that's it. But yeah, I thought that was really strange to me. But maybe it's a site fee. It's easy.
Right.
Cheaper than usual, cheaper than usual. Like, oh yeah, it's a cheaper fee than if we go to LA or something, which business wise, I get it. I actually like this fight. I know Rey Vargas is a big guy. He's tall, lanky, but I think that O'Shaquie Foster's, this is his moment. This is his moment to see if he can do it. What do you think?
I always kind of go against Rey Vargas because he's relatively boring and just uses his
reach,
his gifts, I guess. He's super, super tall, super, super skinny, and got a really long reach. And I think because of the fact he's kind of slightly boring, I normally don't go for him. So today I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to go Rey Vargas. I think he kind of manages to just jab his way to victory. But stylistically, like you said, it's a good matchup because O'Shaquie Foster is tricky. And he's kind of come through the hard way himself, 19-2 to get himself in there eventually for a WBC super featherweight title shot. So it should be an interesting fight. I just don't know whether it's going to attract as many fans as BBC seem to think it is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just site fee is huge, is less. Sometimes that's how it is. It's just like, well, yeah, in a venue like that, even though it has tens of thousands more seats, the site fee that you're paying there is a lot less than for one in LA or Vegas or something. So they're like, oh, okay, well, financially it's a little bit more. It's a little easier for us to break even in an area like this and a venue like this than it is for going over here to this 10,000 seat stadium or something or whatever it is, arena.
There's going to be thousands upon thousands of military and law enforcement first responders there. Could PBC give thousands of tickets away because they don't sell?
That's true, because we've had people who we know in those fields tell us that
100%.
Yeah, they've told us that they get free tickets through their respective fields or their jobs in those fields all the time.
Yeah, there's a website that you can go sign up to if you are military or first responder, and then they stick them on there all the time. And stick them on there all the time.
That's insane. But yeah, I Alamo Dome. I mean, we'll see how the turnout is, but yeah, that's pretty big. But 36-0, Rey Vargas. I mean, let's see how it. He is the favorite, but I think Foster has a chance. If we can bet in California here, I'd put money on Foster just because, he has a shot. I would, and he's obviously the underdog, but we will see. Also on the card, Mario Barrios, 26-2, goes up against Giovanni Santiago, 14-2-1. Barrios, I think is this fight at 140 pounds?
I believe so.
So obviously Barrios has lost to Gervonta Davis, and then he also lost to Keith Thurman, right? He fought Keith Thurman?
Yeah.
So I mean, he got the rub off of those two, but what about a Ryan Mario Barrios fight at 140 pounds?
That would be a good fight.
I mean, that's a good fight.
Yeah, both of them I think would just go for it. Barrios is a pretty big, strong guy, so I think that would be a good fight at 140. But yeah, just the usual across the street type of thing. And for people that remember Giovanni Santiago, he's a previous opponent of Adrian Broner back in 2021.
Oh, now I remember. That's true. Yeah, I saw the Giovanni. I was like, I've seen that name before. So, I mean, I wonder who Barrios, who they're setting him up for.
So PBC wise, it's.
I mean, is it another rematch with Davis if Brian doesn't pan out? I don't know. I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's intriguing. Are they looking at moving him up? Are they looking at moving him up and giving him a fight against some of their 147s?
Well, yeah, I mean, he fought Thurman.
Yeah, just to give it like another name, in the mix, so they can keep moving the titles around and stuff like that, like they always kind of do. So it's an interesting one, really, where they're going to go with him.
Maybe Danny Garcia, Mario Barrios later on this year.
That'd be an interesting fight, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think Danny Garcia still beats him, but at least it's something different.
Do you know what? That's actually interesting. The more I think about that, that's actually not a bad matchup stylistically. That's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I think it'd be an intriguing fight, but I think Garcia is still miles better than Barrios is. But I think Barrios would, give a good account of himself.
Yeah, it's just one of those, isn't it? It's one of those where is that the day that Danny Garcia kind of just wakes up and he's kind of over the hill? He's had a long...
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, that could be it. I mean, he hasn't fought... When's the last time he fought?
I don't know. Remember.
I can't even remember.
Yeah. It's been
I can't even remember. But yeah, you're right. Like Barrios is a name where he can fight between 140 and 147. So PBC can kind of use him back and forth. And I guess it's good for him in terms of like mobility, utility, I guess, being a utility guy. But I don't know. Did you find out who Danny Garcia fight? Or
his last fight was at 154, right? Looks like his last fight was Jose Benavidez Jr., where he won a majority decision, July the 30th, 2022.
Oh, really? Last year?
Yeah.
Oh, that was actually way more recent than I thought.
It headlined the Barclays Center.
Wow. That was way more recent than I thought. I thought for sure it was at least a year maybe more. Benavidez Jr., he's still going, huh? Yeah, because that's right. Because Benavidez Jr. hadn't fought in a couple years, excuse me, and then comes back and fights Danny Garcia. Yeah, I remember that.
Danny Garcia hadn't fought since his loss to Errol Spence in December 2020. So like pretty much 19 months out of the ring.
Damn. Well, he's made really good money in his career, so he can afford to be out 19 months. But it is what it is. Moving on, news and notes section of this week's episode of The Last Round. The UFC's Jorge Masvidal has put together a boxing card with some legendary combat sports names. Roy Jones Jr. and former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Pettis will compete in a pro boxing match on April 1st in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Masvidal confirmed this week with ESPN that this will be happening. I believe that fight is a headliner, and the whole event is called Game Bred Boxing, which I think is Masvidal's nickname, Game Bred. And then on the undercard, former longtime UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo will take on UFC veteran Jeremy Stevens and MMA legend Vitor Belfort. Will face longtime UFC middleweight title contender Ronaldo Souza. How do you say his nickname? Jacare. So these are all boxing matches?
Yeah, all boxing matches. And I watched Masvidal's interview with Ariel Helwani on MMA Fighting, and yeah, he confirmed they're all going to be down as pro boxing matches. And if you look at it, relatively apart from maybe like Roy Jones Jr., they're all, he's only recently retired or, pretty active. So I think it should be like decent fights, to be honest with you. There's only really, Roy Jones Jr. that's been out the ring for, obviously a long time and is kind of a lot older.
Yeah.
Belfort's been fighting, Jacare, so is Anthony Taylor, Paul Daly retired only recently. So it should be a decent standard.
Yeah, we'll see. See how it works out. And then focusing on the Tank Davis-Ryan Garcia contract negotiations and this whole situation about an April fight. As of today, ESPN reported that the planned April 15th fight between both fighters hasn't yet been completed because of a dispute over the rematch clause. And this is according to Oscar De La Hoya of Golden Boy, who talked to ESPN about it. De La Hoya received the contract, according to him, 2 weeks ago and said every other issue has been resolved. And he said, quote, "It boils down to who's going to control the rematch." And then he also said, quote, "We're literally down at the 1 yard line. That's what's holding everything up is the rematch." And then he also says, quote, "It's only fair if Ryan wins, then our side controls everything as the A side. This is just the way it has always been. It's common sense that whoever wins is the A side. That's the bottom line. We're not reinventing the wheel here." And then reportedly, I think De La Hoya, not reportedly, he told ESPN that the rematch clause is unilateral and can be triggered by Davis and his team only in the event that he loses and Ryan wins. Generally, historically, boxers have about a month, 30 days or so to activate the rematch clause. It's usually activated pretty quickly. The unresolved issue pertains to the network and the lead promoter of the potential rematch. So, obviously, Davis is promoted by PBC, Al Heyman, and has been fighting on Showtime during his career, while Garcia is promoted by Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions and has been competing on the DAZN platform. So, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I feel like we keep talking about this. Let me ask you this first. Just give me a percentage-wise. Does this fight happen in April? What's the percentage that it happens in April?
30.
You know what? That's exactly what I was thinking. 30%. That's exactly what I was thinking. 30%.
It seems that Al Heyman is just making it difficult.
I mean, it could be. See, the thing with Al Heyman is like we see evidence or stuff is happening and we kind of put together our own conclusions stuff, but like the guy we've never seen interviews with him. Like he doesn't say anything. Like, so it's kind of like we're all speculating here, but we see kind of evidence of it happening and we try to put the puzzle pieces together as boxing fans and members of the media and all that stuff. Just so, how every sport does. And then, De La Hoya is obviously on Ryan's side, on DAZN's side, on his side. So he's going to say stuff that is beneficial to him. But it could be true, but it's like, do we know what's absolute truth and absolute false? I don't know. I don't know. But this is in big, high profile fights. This is a common issue that has come up before. Yeah. So it's not that it's not possible or it's not probable that it's happened, but is it happening? It's happened before in big fights. So what do you think? Does Oscar De La Hoya have a point that if Ryan wins, Davis activates the rematch clause, then it's only fair that the rematch happens on DAZN and Golden Boy becomes the lead promoter?
Yeah, 100%.
But then, there was some Twitter chatter. Obviously, there's accounts that support promoters and go against others and all that stuff, which is, it's funny. It's entertainment. But they were bringing up the example of George Kambosos. George Kambosos, Devin Haney, signed with Top Rank, signed for 3 fights. 2 of the fights, in order to get the undisputed titles from George Kambosos, he had to go to Australia both times. And Kambosos was essentially the A side in a way, even though Haney won the first fight. He had to go to Australia both times and all that. So there's that example. But is this different in any way, or what do you think?
Yeah, just because of the fact that Kambosos was undisputed or whatever you wanted. Some people say he wasn't undisputed. Some people say he was. He was either undisputed or unified. So he had a lot more eggs in the basket, whereas on this one, there's no real world titles are going to be involved. It's kind of hard to split them, in terms of like who is the most popular and stuff like that, because Ryan's never really done pay-per-views, but his social media is huge. Whereas Davis has been in with the better pedigree of opponents and has actually been on, pay-per-view several times. So just put it, pretty much 50-50 down the middle, like one on one on the other. And then toss a coin. Okay, like one's on DAZN, one's on Showtime, toss a coin, boom. Okay, Showtime's first, DAZN's second.
How much do you think this, because we had some news last week. I know we didn't have an episode last week, so we didn't touch on it when it broke, but there was some news last week that Showtime and their parent company, Paramount, they have a streaming platform, Paramount Plus, will be merging in the future, maybe sometime this year. And the president of Paramount, who also oversees Showtime, and Steven Espinoza and the whole team over there, had some certain quotes that he said in interviews saying, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something along the lines of, I think we tweeted it, if I read it exactly. Where he said something along the lines of, let me see. Okay, here we go. He's the president and CEO of Paramount Global. So this is somebody higher than Steven Espinoza at Showtime. This guy's a higher ranking in the whole company. He said, one of the quotes, and this is just one of a couple that he had said in interviews. He said, quote, while we are confident this is the right move for our company, our consumers, and our partners, we know this change brings uncertainty for the teams working on these brands and businesses, end quote. So he's pretty much saying, look, business-wise, this is best for all. Financially, this is what we need to do. And we acknowledge that this is making the workers who work for these respective brands, Paramount Plus and Showtime, we know this is making you nervous because sometimes when this happens, not sometimes, this happens a lot, in especially in the United States, and all over the world, but in the United States, when these companies or something is like a merge, employees are laid off. And if you're not making money for the company, they're going to just axe your budget. Like, look at HBO Boxing, same thing. Reorganization, they saw HBO Boxing wasn't making money. Like, oh, why are we doing that? We're wasting money on there. So they cut that. And they reallocated those funds that they use for HBO Boxing to, their regular weekly episodic shows or whatever they have. How much of that recent news, do you think is going to play into Showtime and Steven Espinoza's negotiation here? Because obviously for them, it'd be great to have the first fight and the rematch on Showtime. For them, yeah, because it gives them some extra life out of their business. That's something they could tell Paramount, like, hey, well, no, we got these two big fighters. This kid's got social media following of 10 million Instagram followers. He's huge on YouTube and all that stuff. And Gervonta Davis is huge in his own right with, his profile. I mean, as a businessman, that's what I would tell. That's what I would say. Like, wait a minute, let us at least prove ourselves with this. And if we make a profit on those, then, let us keep going at least a little bit. I think that is something huge that Steven Espinoza and Showtime are really thinking about. Even PBC, because it also extends their relationship with Showtime. What do you think?
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that they're probably thinking, you're on DAZN. It's just a little app. We're Showtime. We're the A side, because that's probably the way that they look at it. They probably think that this is my house. Our house is bigger than yours. We're the A side. Like, you're coming to us. So I can see, Espinoza being a bit of a ego trip, from all the stuff he posts on Twitter. So yeah, I could see that, especially, if they're struggling and, a lot of the numbers that are kind of reported online for their pay-per-views, it's looking like they maybe over-embellish the amount that they sell. So I'm sure this is probably going to do great numbers in terms of, Davis obviously is pretty successful. I'm sure Ryan is probably going to sell quite a few with his, social media reach. So I'm sure that's why DAZN wants one and Showtime wants one. And, let's just, fingers crossed, let's just hope we at least get to see it at least just once. We're praying for twice, but at least just give it to us once.
If it doesn't happen in April, when does it happen? I think this summer. But see, Ryan, what's the chance that Ryan, if he loses, let's just say they don't fight in April and they fight in June or July or something, whatever, and they fight in Vegas. So in the summer, Vegas is popular. In the summer, everything's popular, especially Vegas, because it's it's hot, pool season, and all that stuff. What's the likelihood that if Ryan loses, whether he gets knocked out or however he loses, he blames inactivity and he says, "Oh, I should have taken a fight earlier. I should have never skipped that fight in January. If I would have skipped that fight, I would have been more prepared." I don't know why, but I could feel that coming a mile away.
Yeah, from what he was like previously, we don't see him, talk as much and do, as much social media as he used to. But I always had the feeling, and I've said before, I think he wouldn't be the best loser. I think it would affect him quite badly, with his struggles with, mental health. But maybe he hasn't matured, because some of the stuff that he posts now, he does talk slightly differently and stuff like that. So maybe he's matured. So maybe the loss, if he did happen to lose, wouldn't affect him as much. But
we don't know that. We don't know that until we see it happen.
No, and fighters in general, not just somebody like Ryan or someone as young as Ryan. I think they have to convince themselves that it wasn't their fault, that it was something else, so they can get back in there. Because 90%, 80% of fighters, they always come up with some wild reason, and maybe it's just to convince themselves that they are good enough, and it wasn't just due to the fact that somebody else was better. They create this us against them attitude, which is what helps them in the ring, I guess. So yeah, it's not, if that did happen, it's not just Ryan that does that. I think it's very rare do we see that them kind of just shake hands and go, yeah, you were the better guy on the night. It does seem to happen more in MMA, but in boxing, you do see people come up with these wild things. Chris Eubank Jr., for example, loses to Liam Smith and then starts blaming, like he hit me with an elbow. So that's just a recent example that we can use.
Yeah. No, yeah. I don't know. I just think that if the fight doesn't happen in April, are they going to push it to like May? They're not going to push it to May. Canelo fights in May. And also Anthony Joshua was just announced to return against Jermaine Franklin in London on April 1st. I know it's in the UK, it's a little bit different, but Spence and Thurman might be fighting. There's a lot of fighters, like big time fighters, who are fighting the next couple months. Maybe Wilder too. I mean, who knows? Tyson Fury. I think if Ryan just waits like he did, he said, I don't want a tune-up fight. I want to go straight into it. If it was happening in April, then okay. But it doesn't seem like it's going to happen in April, at least as of right now. I don't see Espinoza moving off the negotiation of they want to be the lead promoter in the rematch, especially with the whole Paramount announcement. I think that just solidifies that position in that negotiation even more for Showtime and Espinoza. I don't think they're going to move off of this. So I don't think it's going to. I think 30% that it happens in April is a good guess. This sucks, man. This sucks. I do think they'll fight, but they're not going to fight in April. But we'll see what happens. It just sucks. This whole thing sucks.
It's the Crawford Errol Spence thing again. Crawford saying that he wants an open book. If I'm getting 50% or 40%, whatever it is, I want to see what I'm getting 40% of. I want to see the whole thing. I want to see that. Make sure that you're not, funneling money somewhere else. That was why that supposedly fell through. And then now we've got, Heyman wants to be essentially the A side and the B side, right? He wants to take a little bit of everything. So. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we'll see it. I mean, I think maybe December. If it doesn't happen now, I think there's that many fights around and other sports in America that they may knock it back to as far as the end of the year. They all have, one or two fights, and then.
What's funny is that imagine Canelo showing up at the match for Ryan and Davis, because ever since Ryan left his gym, Canelo has been showing a lot more praise for Tank Davis. In interviews saying, oh yeah, he's one of my favorite fighters. They say, oh yeah, he's one of the best guys around. Like, he's said that in interviews out loud. He never really said that when Ryan was in his camp, But as soon as Ryan left, it's just like, oh wow, like you're really throwing it at him. Imagine if Canelo shows up to that. I mean, he won't. He doesn't really, not really that type of personality. But imagine he shows up. He's in the locker room with Tank Davis and fucking shit. Imagine that rub. That'd be insane. And like I said, AJ comes back April 1st against Jermaine Franklin in a heavyweight bout on DAZN. So after back-to-back losses to Alexander Usyk, let's see what happens. I know people are criticizing him for going up against somebody like Franklin, but back-to-back fights against the best heavyweight in the world essentially right now, Usyk, and he's 0 for 2. This is what happens. They come back and they get in a easier fight to get their confidence back up, get back in the winning column, and then they start proceeding from there to get into the bigger names again. So, this is what happens. We've seen this for years. So I don't know why, it's not like AJ's fought. Like, if you look at his resume, he's fought the best heavyweights in the world since he started, like, for the last 7-8 years. He really has.
It's a tricky one as well, because I understand that Dillian Whyte was kind of like going between trainers, and he kind of came into that fight with like a different style. He had that cross-body defense and stuff like that. And, and I think to help him protect himself from those uppercuts that he seemed to be vulnerable to. But Jermaine Franklin, he looked decent, and there was actually quite a few people online that had him winning that fight against Dillian Whyte. So this is going to be an interesting fight because they may have picked him thinking he was a gimme. He might go in there and shock people.
Maybe. I mean, we've seen it before. You never know. You never know. AJ could still be, experiencing PTSD from the Usyk fight. The being 0-2 against him. Like, you never know.
He's between trainers. Well, not between trainers. Sorry, he's got a new trainer, and then I think we've all seen that. I don't think Anthony Joshua is, the strongest mentally. He does seem to question himself, and when he's pressurized, he does get that kind of like nervous smile when he's in the ring. So if I was Jermaine Franklin, he's just coming off a couple of losses, a new trainer, new style, a lot of pressure on top of him. Just fucking run at him. Get in there as soon as the bell goes. Just run
go
at
after him.
Pressurize him. Start throwing big bombs. Shake him up. So this could, depending on what Franklin does when he gets in there, this could be a little bit of a shock. Honestly,
I think he has as good a chance as anybody does at this point in AJ's career.
Because Franklin went in there, and he didn't seem to care about Dillian Whyte. Franklin at the time was relatively unknown. But he went in there and he put it on Dillian Whyte. He didn't care at all. So getting in there with AJ could be the same sort of thing. And we could see, AJ get clipped and maybe get dropped. And it's honestly going to be interesting. I don't know if it's as a walkover a fight as some people are thinking.
No, yeah, I agree. But April 1st, we're going to have to come back and wait and see what happens, We will see. But thanks again, guys, for listening to this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast. We definitely appreciate it. One more time, Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
At the Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to join us next week. We'll be reviewing the Rey Vargas-O'Shaquie Foster, and then looking forward to a big fight, Lee Wood, Mauricio Lara, and
oh, yeah.
Shall I risk it and say that's not going to go 12? So that's going to be a good one to preview.
Let's save those words for next week because that's going to be a great battle there. Definitely. So from my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.